hatch opened, and several American children hurried up the stair that had been put in place. Most of them were carrying rifles, and one had a large bag. Hua Hua's 2 armed guards flanked the aircraft door to prevent them from entering, but Hua Hua had them make way, since he had seen a Chinese kid at the front of the group, the ambassador Du Bin. Once the children entered the cabin and had caught their breath, Du Bin introduced a blond-haired boy to Hua Hua. "This is Vice President of the United States, William Mitchell, here to welcome you." Hua Hua took stock of the boy, the large gun he had strapped at his waist that looked extremely out of place next to his tailored suit. Du Bin then introduced another boy, wearing fatigues. "This is Major General Dowell, who's in charge of security for UN attendees." "This is how we're being welcomed?" Hua Hua asked Mitchell, which Du Bin translated. "You can have the red carpet and an honor guard if you'd like. The day before yesterday, the president of Finland was given a ceremony on the temporary stage and had his leg shattered by a bullet," Mitchell said, and Du Bin translated for Hua Hua. Hua Hua said, "We're not here to visit the United States, so we don't need such formalities, but this is a little unusual." Mitchell sighed and shook his head. "Please forgive our situation. I'll explain in detail on the way." Then from his bag, Dowell pulled out jackets for the Chinese children to wear. "Bulletproof clothing," he said. Then from another bag, he took out a few snub-nosed black pistols and handed them to Hua Hua and his entourage, saying, "Careful, they're fully loaded." "Why do we need these?" asked Hua Hua in surprise. Mitchell said, "In today's America, if you go out unarmed, it's like going out without pants." They all deplaned and walked down the stairs, and, closely surrounded by a group of soldiers to shield them from any stray bullets, Mitchell led Hua Hua and Du Bin to an armored car parked in the water. The others got into separate cars. The cars were dark and cramped and smelled of fuel. The children sat on hard benches fixed to either side, and then the fully armed motorcade sped away. "The ocean level's rising quickly. Is Shanghai like this?" Mitchell asked Hua Hua. "It is. Hongqiao Airport is flooded, but the adults rushed some dikes in place, so the water hasn't reached the city yet. It won't last for much longer, though. New York is still free of water, but it's not really suited for a UN General Assembly." The motorcade headed toward the city and eventually reached dry roads. At times, overturned vehicles on the roadside were visible through the armored car's small windows, their sides pockmarked with bullet holes, and some of them on fire. There were also large numbers of armed children, clearly not military, walking along the road in groups, or crossing nervously, clutching guns nearly as big as themselves, their bodies slung with ammo belts. When Hua Hua's car passed one group, they suddenly threw themselves to the ground, as practically simultaneously a rain of bullets from one side impacted on the car's armor shell with a thunderous din. "None of this looks normal," Hua Hua said, after a glance out the window. "It's the times, man. Abnormal is normal," Mitchell countered. "We ought to have received you in bulletproof cars, but yesterday a Lincoln was shot up by special armor-piercing bullets, and the Belgian ambassador was injured. So we're taking these armored vehicles as extra insurance. Tanks would be even better, of course, but the city's elevated roadways won't hold up under their weight." It was dark when the motorcade reached the city. The buildings of New York's skyline gleamed like a miniature Milky Way. Like every child, Hua Hua had been full of desire to visit one of the world's biggest cities, and he looked eagerly out the window at the dazzling skyscrapers. But he soon noticed another light flickering in the buildings, the crimson of firelight, and pillars of smoke reaching to the sky. Sometimes a ball of fire rose in the air, and the shadows of the skyscrapers wavered in its magnesium glare. Closer to downtown, he heard the crackle of gunfire, the whine of stray bullets, and the odd explosion. The motorcade came to a halt, and they received word that the road was barricaded up ahead. Ignoring warnings, Hua Hua got out to have a look, and saw sandbags piled up in a fortification that cut off the road. Behind the barricade, children were feeding belts into 3 heavy machine guns. Dowell was negotiating with them. One of the children behind the sand